Well, it's always a good day when you beat a rival on their home field. And even when that rival is 2-10. The Florida Gators took care of business on Ron Zook Field Saturday night, beating the Seminoles 31-11. Florida finishes the regular season 7-5, including ending it with a 3-game win streak against LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. The opportunity to finish 8-5 is a real possibility for the Gators. And all of that is worth celebrating. Okay, so we're going to get into it. Now, at the beginning of the season, we've said this a bajillion times that what we were told over the summer was that the minimum for Napier to be brought back was 6-6. Obviously, it was announced that he would get a year 4 prior to hitting any of those numbers, and fans were rightfully frustrated. But in hindsight, it looks like that was probably the right move, right? Recruiting has taken off. Florida has announced 10 commitments in the past week and a half. They have obviously gone on a 3-game tear. 2 of those top opponents, people knocking on the doors to get into the playoffs, and then obviously a hated rival in Florida State. So, and that mark was surpassed, right? Florida's not 6-6. They are 7-5 with the opportunity to go 8-5. And I think that is real improvement over the 5-7 that Florida had last year. And more than just record, I think you see the improvement on the field the second half of the season, and you see the promise in these young players. When you think about some of the guys that really stand out, the DJ Lagways, the Jaden Baws, the LJ McCrays, all of those guys being true freshmen makes this situation really promising for the future. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about last night. Was it the most beautiful offensive performance? No, it was not. But in previous seasons, even the beginning of this year, the Gators would have let a far inferior Florida State team hang around and maybe even win, right? That did not happen last night. So while the offense had some missteps, the Gators still took care of business. And the defense, they put on a clinic. 5 turnovers. 5. This is a Gator defense that has turned a corner. I know that I've talked a lot at the beginning of the year about how they weren't aggressive and they weren't giving it their all and there was a lack of effort. And then we talked about how we think they're turning the corner, but we needed some more proof. Y'all, the proof is here. You looked at that LSU game, you look at that Ole Miss game, you look at that Florida State game last night. This defense has turned a corner. They are opportunistic, they are aggressive, they are relentless, and they are hungry. Their effort level is through the roof. Their motor doesn't quit. And if I had said those words out loud in September, you would have thought I was talking about another team's defense, probably the team we were playing at the time, right? I think it is so hard to put into words the growth that this defense has had. Yesterday, Florida had 8 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, 3 passes batted down, and they caused 8 fumbles, 5 of which they recovered, like I said earlier. That is huge. So impressive, and gives this team the ability to stay in games even if the offense isn't clicking at full cylinders, right? And let's talk a little bit about that offense. Anytime that you hang 31 points on a team, you did some things right. But DJ Lagway did have an off night compared to his previous showings. But his off night was still pretty damn impressive. And we also have to keep in mind that this is a true freshman thrown into the mix. He's now 5-0 in games that he both started and finished. And guys, he's 18 years old. I think some of the times that I was absolutely the most impressed by him last night was actually after a mistake was made, either his mistake or a wide receiver's. He took ownership. You saw him do things like pat his chest and say, that was me, my bad. You saw him, react, show emotion when things went wrong. And I think that how you react when things do go not the way you wanted them to go, that's part of what makes you special, right? Special players aren't just special when things go right. And I think Lagway's no exception to that. And we saw that last night. This is a hungry, young, talented player. And I'm going to talk about it again in a few minutes, but the ceiling on him is so high. There's a lot of things that he's going to learn to do better over the next couple of years, right? And that should really scare Florida's opponents. He has so much room for growth. And if I'm on the Gators schedule next year, I'm concerned about that. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened after the game as well. Several of you tweeted at me about the Gator players planting a flag at midfield. It was George Gubbs Jr. and then Coach Norvell's reaction to it. So here are my thoughts. I don't really have a problem with anything that any of the Gator players did. There is a part of me that wants to say, act like you've been there before. But honestly, they haven't. This is the first time Coach Napier has beaten Florida State. Last year, these same kids watched Florida State cut a piece of our field, bring it home to their, sod cemetery. I don't think that planting a flag at midfield is any more dramatic than that. I think it's just part of the pageantry of this. It's part of the rivalry. I did find Norvell's reaction silly. This is the same coach when asked about his players removing sod last year, which, by the way, if there's videos circulating, you can see them. It didn't end until police actually got them to stop cutting the turf. Again, I don't really have a huge issue with that. But Norvell's reaction was essentially, it's not my problem when it happened at Florida. He didn't have an issue with what his players did then. So, and for the record, I don't have a problem with what FSU players did last year. I just think what's fair is fair. I'm kind of, reminded of that old Spurrier quote, it's my job to score and it's their job to stop me. Don't want rivals dancing at midfield or planting a flag. Beat them. Heated emotions are part of what make rivalry games so much fun. I thought yelling at Napier and throwing the Gator flag was probably just as, disrespectful as anything else that happened. For me, the line that would be drawn is no fighting. I don't think there's any need for that. I understand that Florida State fans are upset when they see Florida dancing on their logo. I understand that everybody was at midfield when that happened. Again, win the game and you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. If you'd had that same sort of fight during the game, maybe the outcome would be different. I felt like Norvell's reaction was kind of childish. And again, I'm sure he's frustrated, right? He has lost multiple players to Florida over the last couple of weeks, recruiting wise. His team is 2-10 after he spent the entire summer beating his chest talking about how, the ACC wasn't good enough for Florida State and how they were unjustly left out of the playoffs, to then turn around and have this type of performance. I get it. He probably has a lot of pent-up emotion about that, and probably rightfully so. But the place to start for him maybe would be the mirror, as opposed to yelling at Billy Napier, who I felt like handled it totally fine on the field and didn't really react to Norvell and, just wanted to shake his hand, right? After in the press conference, Napier said, this isn't what we're about. This takes away from it and there'll be punishments. Honestly, I hope there's not. I don't have an issue with these players being pumped about winning this game, even though Florida State is 2-10. Like I said earlier, it's the first time Napier has beaten Florida State. It was up there on Ron Zook Field. That carries some meaning for these players as well. And I really think what we're watching and what we're seeing is a culmination of them getting to finally celebrate the hard work that they have put in, right? This was not a good team at the beginning of the season. They knew it. We all knew it. That had to be frustrating in that locker room. And they band together, they continued to work, and we're seeing that payoff right now towards the end of the season. And I'm okay with letting them celebrate that. Now, do I think people need to throw punches and such? Probably not, right? But I don't really have any issue with what went on there. I don't think any of our players should be punished. I think Norvell just is misplaced anger, right? I think he should go look in the mirror or talk to his team or something else. I don't think it has anything to do really with Napier or the Gators. And it was a big win. It's worth celebrating. So now what, right? Now we get a bowl game. We'll find out in about a week who we play, where it'll be. This is huge though, not just because we have the opportunity to go 8-5, which I think is important, but you get those 14 extra practices or whatever the number is, those extra bowl practices. When you're talking about a quarterback, like I said earlier, DJ Lagway, true freshman. He's now started 6 games, finished 5, right? he needs this opportunity to grow. He needs this opportunity to continue to work with some of these younger guys. He's going to get them. If Florida wasn't bowl eligible, they would miss a large chunk of time that they could be using to get better. So far more than who we get or where they go or what the bowl gifts are, or even getting that 8th win, is getting those additional practices that come with a bowl bid. So, I'm excited to see what they're able to do with that time. I'm excited to see. I have a feeling we will see very little opt-outs for this bowl game. That's a guess, but looking how this team plays together, looking at their relationships with each other, I'm going to guess we have very little opt-outs, which I think is awesome as well. Now, some real work starts though. The transfer portal is going to open up. This coaching staff is going to have to move quicker than they have ever moved in the transfer portal to pick up some pieces. Florida is going to need to get a couple of wide receivers. We lose DK, we lose Badger. Those are key players to this situation right here. Obviously, Montrell is gone. We're going to need to get some defensive line, edge rushers, and potentially a couple DBs. If Florida can do that, this is going to be a team that's really competitive in 2025, but they got to move fast. And then this week is early signing day. Florida already has, I believe, 20 commits at this point. That was about the max of where I saw this class finishing. So will we see somebody flip elsewhere from our class and give us more room? I don't know. But I know that, there are some players that Florida is still hot on the trail on, hoping that they can flip, hoping that they can get to commit to Florida. So this is going to be a big week to continue to watch, to see what to see what Coach Napier is able to close with, and where this class is going to end up. Obviously, regular signing day is not until February, but most people make their decision by this early signing day period that happens this upcoming week. So those are going to be major things to pay attention to, see where we can end up, what kind of pieces to the puzzle Florida can pick up. DJ Lagway said yesterday he's going to be involved in that process. I absolutely believe that. People want to play for him. The DJ Lagway effect is real, and we're seeing that with this recruiting class. We're seeing that on the field. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how we finish up this week. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I was looking at my stats the other day, and over 50% of you that watch this channel on a regular basis are not subscribed. That means we could have close to 25,000-ish subscribers if everybody that watched on a regular basis was tuned in. So do me a favor, if you're not subscribed, hit that button right now. Stay tuned in. We're going to have lots of updates on recruiting this week. We'll get some player interviews in there, and we'll see where we end up in the bowl game. As always, thanks for tuning in. It's a good day to be a Gator.